So I revamped it to 690 hours, which includes every one of my weekend courses. So all of my continuing ed courses are included in the students' level 2 program, which is the apprenticeship clinical residency part. So they learn all of this stuff before they even graduate from here, before they even get their license. So,
so cool.
Yeah. And then, when we reopened, we were still down on Kuakini, Hualalai, in that old building. And we moved to this new facility in May of 21. So we've been here almost 3 years.
Wow.
So, and I'm going I'll take you guys through a walkthrough after we're done with this, to kind of show you a little bit. There's one room that we can't use yet still, and I'll talk about that. But yeah, so the school is up and running. We currently have 6 students in student clinic. We will have 9 or 10 by July. But yeah, I try and limit the classes to 2 to 4 students. So very small classes. And I like that.
I think it's more intimate. You get deeper knowledge. You get to ask questions. Yeah. Like, it's not small as much as it's intimate and, one-on-one, more one-on-one support in terms
and of even the CEU classes, I limit it to 8 to 10 people. 4 to 5 tables that are in there. And
are you offering anything online too?
Nothing yet. I'm thinking about it. I have to fill out some extra paperwork.
Yeah.
At the accreditation committee, and but hopefully I can have that done by the end of the year.
That's awesome. That'd be great.
So we'll see.
Yeah.
So enough about me. I could probably sit here and talk all day about it, but how about you? Tell me about your business.
What about my business?
Yeah.
I'm so curious. We don't talk about my business.
So Stephanie is my go-to. So if I have an idea that I think I want to do, I'll reach out to her and I'll say, hey, should I do this? Do you think I should do this? And in my mind, I think I already know the answer, but it's just hearing the acknowledgement that, yeah, that's a good idea. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you should do that.
Yeah. Well, first off, I'd probably correct that there's no should, because there's no should. When I ask so I am super intuitive. That's part of my read.
And that's why I ask her.
Right? Is that, you will bounce things off me and I'll feel and sense things and I'll ask you questions and get you clear on where your insight is as well. Cause you're super, super, obviously your gut instinct is spot on. I think sometimes though, when we're so close to something, we don't always know what to look for or what questions to ask. Yes. And I feel like that's a role I play a lot with very gifted, like high powered, entrepreneurs, is that sometimes when we're so close to an idea, we don't know what else to ask for, right? So like even when you moved in, you were considering this space.
Yes.
There were things that you had to negotiate with and things you had to ask for that I basically said, hey, don't, remember this, remember that, remember this. And it, so I feel like part of my role as a business coach, because I come from this place of organizational, development. So I studied people, organization, systems, culture, and like what helps create companies from the inside out, right? This isn't just, I didn't go to just business admin. Like it was more of the people, the structures, the systems that create business, right? And how to operate within relationships. Because, I don't know if I ever told you this story, but when I went to college, I was in real estate, right? And they brought in a sales consultant, kind of like a role I played currently. And this guy was supposed to develop us in sales, and he did this sales assessment. I was 21 years old. And at the time I was in the top 5 real estate agents out of 40 for the company. And he sat us all down and gave us like the reports one-on-one. And he sat down with me. I'm 21 years old. And he says to me, you're never going to be successful at sales. And I said, excuse me? I said, how am I not? I'm in the top 5. I'm literally, at the time, I think I was 3rd. And I was like, I'm 3rd out of 40, and I'm only 21, I said, that doesn't really add up. And he goes, well, no, because the top salespeople have money as the top 2 drivers. And money is 3rd for you. it's not first or second. So you're never going to be good at sales. That was his translation of this. And I said, I'm so curious, what's first? And he goes, oh, relationships. Well, what we know now, because you have to remember, I'm 45, so that was 24 years ago.
Right.
24 years ago, we thought relationships was not a thing in sales. Is that crazy?
Yeah.
Like they thought if money was not your top two, you're not going to, like they would fire someone like me. If they had done a sales assessment, they would never have hired me because money was never one or two. Do you understand? If they were looking for that type of person.
Right.
What I said to him in that moment, I said, I think you have it all wrong. I think relationships are exactly why I'm going to be successful, because I appreciate who I am. I appreciate who people are. And I cultivate relationships, my whole life. At that point, I was still friends with kindergarten friends, right? And they're in my life. I could Facebook them right now, right? And be like, hey, Mia, what are you doing? Right? For somebody at that age, like here he is, and he's 50 years old, he's hired, he's a professional, and he's telling me with this information that I'm not, but do you see the impact of something like that? If I didn't know myself,
right?
If I didn't know myself, I'd be like, well, this guy in a suit and a degree and an assessment tells me I'm never going to be good at sales. Yeah. And I challenge that, because what we learned, right, when I went to grad school and things started coming out, it was like, wait a second, relationships are key. Like relationships are super important. Not just the relationships that we surround ourselves with and the people that are influenced every day, but how we cultivate relationships with our clients, with our patients, with those things. Like absolutely, how we care about those people, how we care about our front line. Absolutely, people feel the difference between whether you're a user, like, oh, I'm just going to ask you for something, like, I want to tell you a second about that in a moment. Don't do that. Don't just go after people when you need something from them. Yeah. Have relationships with people that, when you call on them, that they're you're giving me pasta salad, but I'm going to go feed your cat. Right. Like it's going to be, it's not, I'm not going to make you pasta salad. She knows she's not going to ask me for pasta salad, right? That's not what she's going to come to me for. But you can ask me for the things that I can do for you. Absolutely. And I'm going to prioritize that. Even if it's hard for me, I'm going to say, hey, that's hard, but I could do it here or whatever, and we're going to make it work. But giver to giver, showing up to give, showing up to really learn and cultivate relationships. That's how I've been so successful in my life. This is how I've been able to build relationships like I do with, the Big Island Chocolate Festival and Kona Moms and my business and the networking with BNI and all of those things was because when I remember walking into BNI and going, oh my God, these people speak my language, without me, I was already speaking Giver's Gain. I was already being that. And then I found an organization that was modeling the way that I am. But I always go back to that sales consultant because I think to myself, I don't want to be him. Exactly. Yep. My role as a consultant or as a coach is never to talk you out of what's right for you. Yeah. My job is to give you perspective, to help you hear yourself and helps get you out of your own way. Like sometimes when you would call me, you were really concerned or you were this or you were that. And I wouldn't say, don't be that way. I'm like, yeah, those are real. Those are real. Yeah. And I'm glad you're paying attention to that. Yeah. And I'm curious if that wasn't an obstacle, if that was cared for, what decision would you make? Right. And so that's my role. My role is not to disconnect you from yourself and tell you I'm the one that knows everything. Because I am super intuitive. And when people lie to themselves, I know when you're lying. And my question to me inside myself is, are you ready to hear that you're lying to yourself? Some people aren't. And it's not my job. No, they're not. It's not my job to tell you you're lying to yourself if you're not ready for it. That's traumatizing. Versus saying, yeah, I want to hear the truth. And then it's like, okay, here's the real. And I'll tell you this one story because it's popping in my mind. I had this lady come to you and she pitched me this business plan and why she was going to hire me. And I mean, it was dotting the I's, crossing the T's. I mean, it was everything. And it was beautiful. And I said, wow, this is the most beautiful thought out business plan. Well, whose is it? Because not you. And she was her face just went, she's like, my dad's. And I said, when I tune into your dad, that is his dream, and he will totally have the life force to bring that business to life. I'm gonna be real, you don't. Mm-hmm. You don't have a bit. Your life force isn't this. And I looked at her and I asked guidance, right? What's the question for her? Mm-hmm. And I looked at her and I said, tell me about the art. And she just started bawling. And she was like, I've always been an artist. I have this way. I'm like, I'm gonna tell you right now, that's where you're gonna. That you do art and you work on some of this I can't make money doing my art shit.
Mm-hmm.
And you learn that you can be the exception to the rule. And I promise you, you will have a much better life than trying to bring this to life.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's important, is for somebody to follow the passion that they have, not somebody else's idea.
Absolutely.
Right?
So if I had listened to the guy and said money needed to be 1 or 2, I would have been out of integrity with how I operate, and I would never have reached the levels of success that I have in my life, right? By trusting a guru or trusting someone outside of me. What I said in that moment was, you got it wrong. I believe relationships are key. And I believe that in the end, money is a given. Money is a tool. We have to care for it. We have to keep a pulse on it. It is how the world still operates in terms of we live on an island. We understand barter too. But in general, money is still an exchange for things, and we're still operating with it. But it's not the reason why we create what we create, right? We can create lots of different things. I've learned that, putting on the Big Island Chocolate Festival on an island where we have limited resources sometimes, like we don't always have the funds for things, but we can do barter, and this person needs that. And, you like learn how to get things done without just the means of direct dollar exchange, right? Like, so there is something about being creative outside the box of finances. And at the same time, or getting creative, like getting the 0% financing, for a year with a plan to sell something that's going to help pay that off before that kicks in, right? Like, don't just go and get a bunch of credit lines at 0% without a real clear plan of how that's going to get addressed and paid. And I think that's where people go wrong. Like, I get all this cash to go fund these ideas, but they're not actually putting it into place to accommodate paying it off in time, right? So like you can use those strategies, but you got to also think all the big picture. You can't just use the now, you have to use the bigger picture too. And I think we always have to kind of be putting our feet in a couple different spots, right? Like, what can I do now? And then what can I seed for 3 months? What can I do now? What can I seed for 6 months? What can I do now? What can I seed for a year? But I think ultimately what makes me different as a business coach and as a leadership, I'm really passionate about developing leaders. I'm passionate about people understanding their emotional awareness and their emotional mastery. Emotional intelligence is one of the number one factors of a leader. When they are really operating from a level of emotional mastery, they develop relationships differently. They operate in their business differently. They care about themselves differently. And so I'm really passionate about that. And I really do believe that the more we are in tune with ourselves and our feeling energy, it gets it gets demonized. Like, a lot of people are like, don't be feeling that, just fake it to make it, like all this bullshit. In reality, the highest vibration you can be in is authenticity. And authenticity sometimes, and Melissa, I know you were with me on this. Authenticity sometimes means today was a fucking hard day.
Yeah.
Right? Today was a fucking hard day. Like, that's authenticity.
Yes.
It is not good to pretend and put the smile on and say today wasn't hard, because everyone's going to feel she's lying, something's wrong, whatever, right?
Yep.
Versus you saying it's a fucking hard day.
Yeah.
It's a hard day. And it doesn't mean we don't get up and try again. But I feel like when we can be authentic to what's really there for us in like a really cool way, we can show up and keep developing relationships and still be vulnerable without feeling like we always have to have it together, or we always have to whatever. I just felt like it was going to go off soon, so I'm paying attention. You know what I mean? So like, there's something here about like, what does it mean to be authentic without it being high vibe all the time, or this toxic positive psychology? And I hate it because I was that. 12 years ago, before I had a kid, before I started studying a lot of this, I was always passionate about emotional intelligence and sales and all that, but I didn't understand what it developed in our giftedness, right? In our sensitivities. Like, when we are sensitive to energy, right, of other people. I mean, the best way I tell people is like, here's how you read energy. You walk into a room and you can feel whether someone's in a fight, or if it's like, I don't want to be here. Like, we've all been at a party where you walk in and you're like, something's off. We might not be able to point to where it is, but we feel it.
Right.
And I think that's what happens. I think we are feeling beings, and we are in a world that tells us feeling is wrong or bad, or something's bad with you, or if you're good, or high vibe it, like positive energy only, like look at the vibration. And when I see that, I'm like, wait a second, where does authenticity come? Because authenticity is like, yeah, I fucking killed it and I'm going to rock star it. Right. But it's also, shit, today was hard.
Yep.
And it's that range of where I am in my truth, And so ultimately, I think eventually I'm going to do something. I feel like I'm in this like metamorphosis of myself in terms of raising, a future leader and understanding what it takes to do that. Not just with me, but the community we surround ourselves with, the friends that we choose, the schools that we choose, all of those things influence how we see ourselves, and, I feel like eventually I'm going to do something around helping the leaders I help develop in business, develop the future leaders of the world, whether that's going to be like influencing, school systems or how we educate them on emotional intelligence, on understanding our sensitivities, our giftedness, our intuition, our gut instincts. A lot of times I will work with guy entrepreneurs and, they don't call it intuition. They're just like, I just know. I just had that gut instinct. Like that's intuition. Like that's just the guy's version of it, right? Like instinct is instinct, but instinct comes from feeling. And when we are tied into feeling and being tuned into that, then we kind of know what's right or what's not, right? We can kind of feel whether or not we should hire somebody or we should work with somebody just based on what it feels like to us. And now sometimes we can get in our own way because we're projecting, right? Like our traumas, we can project that. But when you know yourself, you can know that you're sensitive to that and then you can adjust for that, right? So for me, I think that my business is really about helping people hone that sensitive nature in them.
Even acknowledge it.
Yeah. And to bring it to, and to not, to harness it in a way, if that makes sense, and develop a relationship with themselves.
Because I know when I first moved here.
I remember you telling me, I'm not woo-woo at all. I'm not woo-woo. I will not be woo-woo. And now she does candles and evil eye and crystals everywhere. I was like, oh yeah,
I've got tarot decks.
All right, girl. I was like, there's no way you're hanging out with me if you don't think you're.
So where can somebody access your expertise?
Yeah, I think
website. You've got a class that's going on now as well.
I just ended. It will come back in fall, but yeah, it was that one really kind of set so much in tone for me. It's an 8-week class on inner leadership around emotional mastery and intuition and how to use them. But this inner leadership piece was kind of like the theme of teaching this 3 times in a year. What's so interesting is every time the content didn't really change, but the people in it shifted like how it was approached. And authenticity became a huge thing. Like it wasn't about fake it till you make it. It was like, how do I get to be authentic in this moment? And it doesn't mean I have to share everything. Like there's those days where I don't really want to talk about my heavy, but I can tell you it's been heavy and I don't want to go there. And that's my authentic expression in that moment. Right. And when you're around people that can hold that, it's really cool. So I think the best way to keep, tabs or like stay in tune with me would be to follow me on Instagram. InFlowCEO mom. And it really is both sides of me because I learned so much on my social experiment with my son. I tell him all the time, we're in our own little social experiment. We get to see, like, are we going to fuck yet? Are we not? No. And believe me, there are days I'm like, oh, you're going to be on the therapist couch for this one. But ultimately, I look at him and I think, yeah, I'm doing something different here. I was set on a path of how do I get to raise a healthy human? What does it look to raise a healthy human consciously, like with the intention of raising a healthy human, especially a boy? And when I started doing all this research on boy, what we tell boys and what do we tell boys about emotional intelligence and boys don't cry and like all this weird shit, all this weird programming. I just was like, I want to do it different. I want to help my kid know that he matters and he's cool, but there's responsibility and he has to live in integrity and all those things. But yeah, I would say InFlowCEO mom on Instagram is great. Facebook, Stephanie Marie Beeby. And then, my website's in a process right now. I mean, you can go to it, but it's very consulting based, very business based. I'm in a revamp over the summer where I'm bringing that course, that 8-week course, but digital. So it's going to be something that you can like be self-led and go through it. And then I'm going to host a live one, but like where we just do pop-ins once a month and like talk about the content no matter where you are in it. But yeah, it's going to be a little different like that where it's going to be self-led. I'd love to reach more people. And unfortunately I'm me and the biggest class I had was 12 and that's a lot to manage in a Zoom with breakouts and questions and try to keep it in 90 minutes. So my goal is to work through the content that got really established over 3 live sessions. Very small tweaks. I was like, oh, this content's solid. So now I'm recording it. It will be, self-led. And then there'll be like a once a month where we get on in these 2-hour little things where you can come and ask questions and practice, and kind of like a practicum kind of idea, like a feelings gym. Like we're just going to the feelings gym. We're going to be ourselves. We're going to ask those tough questions. We're going to feel into our nervous system. That's a big one.
Yep.
So many people don't understand how much the nervous system is the wiring of our body. And if we don't pay attention to that, it just can get stuck in certain zones, right? And it can cause wreak havoc and create, creativity, on connection, on like actually enjoying your life.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that are coming on my way, and the website will reflect that soon. But there's only one of me. So
excellent. Well, thank you so much for being here. I know your alarm went off, so you got to get going.
Good go.
So thank you for joining us. This was our first episode for the Maya Pro Chronicles podcast, Dirty Laundry. See you next time. Bye.